All right. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about how to focus on joy without going into spiritual bypassing. Because here is the truth of the matter, yeah? There is no right or wrong, good or bad, spiritual or not spiritual thing in reality, okay? Everything is a tool that has its time and a place. So, hi. This work that we're doing in this self-love kind of universe that I speak from is usually focused on shadow work. Okay, well, there's an emphasis on shadow work because as a humanity, we tend to be more afraid of the darker side of things, our emotions, our negative emotions, our fears, our anxieties, our depressions, and the symptoms of our physical illness and the relationship problems and all these things. And a lot of the spirituality and the self-help and the self-improvement world focuses a lot on fixing that stuff, getting rid of those things, even like mainstream, right? Like mainstream help. We want to give you a drug to turn off your negative emotions. We want to do whatever we want to do. We want to numb, we want to scapegoat, we want to turn it off, we want to not look at it, we want to stay in the light. In the secular world and in the spirituality world, there's a huge emphasis on just like being positive and staying in the bright side and using your discipline to make yourself get to where you want to go and staying focused on the positive and right, like the Abraham Hicks and the manifestation and the Byron Katie and the like questioning your thoughts, and reality is actually just perfectly perfect all the time, and if you are feeling like it isn't, there's something wrong with you. And so of course I come and I say, okay, well, to an extent there is some truth to all of those things that all of those people say. So again, I'm not saying don't follow any of those other teachers, they're all wrong and bad. That's not true. I believe that everyone has something to give and has some aspect of truth that they're sharing. But if we neglect to look at our shadow, if we neglect to look at our negative emotions, if we neglect to look at our symptoms, if we neglect to look at the harder things, and we don't use those messengers as the messengers that they are, we will not be able to figure out how to change our lives. Okay? That's my main message, is that the negative emotions, our negative thoughts, are all of the painful symptoms in our relationships and in our money situation and in our body situation are symptoms of a way that we're living, of a system that we're in because of society, of something that's not supporting human life functioning. Okay, like that is where the pain comes from. And so if we can look at these more negative things as messengers, and we can say, okay, like I want to understand why I feel this way. I want to understand why I have pain. Because really at the end of the day, right, we label it in all these different ways. Anxiety, depression, fear, coping mechanisms, self-sabotage, not being who we really want to be, not being able to fully express ourselves, all these things. But if we roll it all down and simplify it, all of our problems is I'm in pain and I want to get out of pain. I want to feel better. And if we boil down what pain is just, right, I'm not being able to get my needs met. I'm not being able to grow the way that I want to grow. So I'm in pain, because at the end of the day, we are very complex and also very simple all at once. We are life that wants to grow and express. And if something is hindering our growth, if something is hindering our expression, if something is challenging us and we don't know how to work with that challenge, because again, right, life is not supposed to always be sunshine and roses, and we won't reach our maximum potential without challenge and without resistance. And I don't feel like we want to swing way the other way to be like, you know, anything that's hard or anything that's resistance or anything that's challenging is wrong and something we need to get rid of, because that's not true. It helps us, right? The resistance, the challenge, it's like lifting weights. You can't get strong if you don't lift something that's heavier than you can lift. But at the same time, right, there needs to be this balance. And when we're in pain, We need to address the pain. And a lot of the time, the answer to why we're in pain will be found by investigating the pain, right? It's not about trying to transcend it. It's not about trying to just fix it from what we think it is. It's not about trying to ignore it or numb it out or cope with it or any of these things. And if we are in a behavior of numbing or coping or self-sabotaging or any of these things, we have an addiction. We have to understand that it's like, this is how we're dealing with a pain that we don't understand. And so my main emphasis in my teachings, or in my offerings, I don't even like calling them teachings, in what I offer is around, can we be with our negative emotions? Can we be with our pain? Can we be with our anxieties and our coping mechanisms and our self-sabotage and all these parts of ourselves we think are wrong and bad and broken, because that's the other part, right? That society has taught us, this is how you have success, this is how you have to be in order to be a good person, in order to have your needs met, in order to be good enough, in order to be whatever. And a lot of the time, that doesn't align with who we actually are. And the way society is set up, in a lot of ways, not always, not everything, but in a lot of ways, causes all of us pain, because it's not in alignment with how reality functions. We're in competition with each other. There's no social safety nets. We are constantly having to work, and not enough, and not enough, and not enough, and over-consuming, and over-producing, and over-consuming, and over-producing, and we're killing ourselves. We're not being allowed to be human. And it's like, and again, it's not that we're just making terrible choices for ourselves because we should be able to know better and we don't. It's like we've been indoctrinated into a culture that is normal to us. We're the fish in water. We don't even know what it looks like for there to be any other option. We don't even know to question what we don't know to question. Yes? Because to our minds, this is normal. This is what everyone else is doing. It looks like everyone else is having success. All the success teachers tell me that I should be able to be happy in this. If I just do all these things perfectly, I will be this, and it will be great, and I will be happy. And then if we're still in pain, even though we're trying really hard, or if we're having to cope, if we're having to self-sabotage, if we're having to numb ourselves in order to do it, it's like we need to be able to validate that and say, okay, well, theory is not holding up to reality. If it were true that all of these things should make me happy, and if it were true that if I just did these things right, it would work, then I should be happy. Then it should be feeling good to be pursuing these things. Because even just being on the path should feel good. There should be a part of me that's like, yeah, this is helping me grow. This is what's supportive of me in my life. And if it doesn't feel like that, we need to investigate. So that's why what I offer is very much focused on, okay, don't try and get rid of your negative emotion. Don't try and get rid of your pain. Don't try to figure out how to make it stop. We want to listen to it, okay? Not just so that we can get good at being in pain, not just so that we can get good at tolerating pain, but because within the pain, we're going to find the answer to why we're in pain, and then we will be able to effectively create change. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not saying our pain is just something we should learn to deal with, or that we should just learn to be okay with, or that it's all an illusion and just being with it and processing it, and one day we'll just not feel it anymore. That's not what I'm saying either. I'm saying we be with it and we process it to get the information, right? Do I have a false belief? Is this a false perception? Is this a way of life that I was taught I had to live in all these ways, and I've completely internalized it because of course, and it's just not in alignment with how humans function. It's not in alignment with how I function. Maybe these things work for other people. It doesn't work for me. What is the kind of life that's going to support me? And then we make the changes based on that. So what I'm saying is, right, if you've attempted to fix your pain in all these different ways and it hasn't worked, that means we still don't know why you're in pain. We still don't know what's really going on. Or, right, we're taking steps. We're taking little steps towards better and better and better. Because a lot of the time we're not going to just like know why we're in pain and then know how to get out of it. That's not how life works. Usually it's going to be like, oh, okay, this little thing I'm going to change, and then this little step, and then this little step, and then this little step, and we feel incrementally better. But the point is, I get us to focus on all of these things because most of us don't want to, and most of us haven't been taught how to do that, and we've been taught the opposite. We've been taught to spiritually bypass, to pretend it's not happening, to try to self-help and personal growth and fix these things that are wrong with us. And it's just, right, it's my belief, and that is part of the core of what I offer, that there isn't anything wrong with any of us. I don't think we're broken. I don't think that when we're in pain or when we're addicted or when we're self-sabotaging or when we're causing harm, that it's because we are broken. It's always, we were trained to believe some sort of system. We were indoctrinated into a culture. We're surrounded by people who all believe these things. Like, there's always so much more to it than just we're just choosing to be harmful, or we're choosing to hurt ourselves, or we're broken and there's something wrong with us. We're not broken. There's not something wrong with us. We're not being supported. We don't have the right information to move ourselves forward. And being with our pain, being with our self-sabotage, being with these parts of ourselves that we think are wrong and bad and broken and that we think are destroying our lives, we will always find that when we investigate them and we sit with them and we are with them, these parts are always innocent. They're always just doing the best they know to do to keep us alive. Like the most harmful, horrible person that you can think of in the world. We can look at their way of being and we can judge them and we can be upset with it and we can be absolutely outraged at the harm they cause. And that's justified, right? Because of course we look around the world and we see people who are doing things that are just blatantly harmful, and we think, like, you should know better. You're an adult. You should know better. You should be able to do better. And it is absolutely ridiculous that you're doing these things. And we all have that. I have that, right? I sometimes forget to have compassion for people, and I look at their behavior and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is just blatantly horrible, and how can you not see that what you're doing is horrible? But I also know that at the end of the day, people are complex. We were indoctrinated. We were raised in cultures and systems that are lineages back, right? And then we're all in echo chambers and we're all conditioned, and not a lot of us transcend our conditioning. Not a lot of us ever see outside of it because we live in cultures, in little bubbles that believe what we believe, and we all have social groups that believe what we believe, and it's so easy to find echo chambers these days, to literally live in your little bubble. And then how often and common it is for all these little groups of people to demonize everyone and everything else. So even if you start to look outside and think, well, maybe my way of life isn't perfect, what are these other people doing? The group has made those people evil. The group has made those people, but look at the terrible results they're getting, right? The liberals look at the conservatives and they're like, look at how horrible they are. Look at all the terrible things that they do. Look at all the horrible outcomes. They are evil. But the conservatives feel the exact same way about the liberals. They look at their behavior and they think, well, look at how they're destroying their lives. Look at how they're doing this. Look at how they're doing that. Every religion thinks this about every other religion. Every socioeconomic group feels this way about every other socioeconomic group. We have so much. This is how it is. Survival instinct, that fitting in equals survival. So whatever you were raised in, whatever culture you were raised in, whatever thing you were raised in, you have double indoctrination that that's what you were raised on. That's what you were taught from the very beginning when you didn't even know to think that there could be anything else. And then by the time you get old enough to consider that there are other options, you've already been poisoned with how horrible all the other options are. So is it any wonder that we grow to be how we are, and then it just keeps evolving, right? Like, we look at the millionaires and we think that they're just evil, horrible people, but it's like they got that way for a reason. There was a whole lineage there, and it's our general systems. Okay, so that's blah, blah, blah. Big picture, the point being, there's nothing wrong with any of us. It's all complex systems. And when we can return to curiosity and compassion, that's why that's like, anytime anyone's like, yeah, but what do I do? Whenever in doubt, we return to curiosity and compassion with ourselves. That's always where we start. Because from those places, when we feel safe with ourselves, when we are showing up for ourselves with curiosity and compassion, we need to understand that physiologically, biologically, the way that our nervous systems work, when we feel that safety, that is when our consciousness can expand. And I don't mean that esoterically. I don't mean that magic. I literally mean biologically. When we are afraid, when we feel scared, our body perceives that we are in physical danger. And when our bodies perceive that we're in physical danger, it goes into fight or flight mode, or flee. And essentially what this does is it narrows our focus and it drives us into nervous system programs. We are not using our higher reasoning, higher logic, higher function skills at these points. We tap into our brainstem, literally what we were programmed with when we were born from 0 to 7 before we had higher reasoning. We tap into just doing what we always done. Because to our bodies, what we've always done is the reason we're still alive. To our bodies, as nonsensical as it might be to our logic, that when I'm scared, I eat an entire tub of ice cream. Like, how is it that that makes me feel better? How is it that that serves me? This clearly is a faulty, there's something wrong with me. No. You got scared. Something triggered you. You don't know what it was. Maybe you do. I don't know. Your body looked for something to make you feel safe. If you were a small child and you learned to eat your emotions, to do something to make it so that you didn't say what you wanted to say, you shut yourself up. That's how you survived your childhood. You are going to eventually develop more and more coping mechanisms, ways of being, that when you feel threatened and you feel scared, you feel not safe, the thing you know to do is to not talk, is to go quiet, to shut everything down. Don't look, don't make a sound, go quiet. Find some way to make yourself smaller. Find some way to gain pleasure, to make yourself feel safe. And so fat, sugar, salt, ice cream, it helps you numb, it helps you suppress. You felt scared, it made you feel safe. Your body thinks that saved your life. So now you do that over and over and over again, every time you're in a state of fear. That's how you're going to cope. That's how you're going to make yourself feel better when you've gone all these days and all these weeks in a life you don't like because it was the life you were trained to live. And that's how you're coping with it, right? So getting into why we do these things, when we start with compassion and curiosity, we help to move ourselves out of that fight or flight state where all we can do is what we've always done, where all we can do is just go into those nervous system patterns that our bodies think we're going to die, so I got to do the same thing to save my life. And it makes it possible for us to get curious about, okay, what's really going on here? What do I really need? What am I actually feeling? What actually triggered me? What was it that didn't feel good? Why doesn't it feel good? Because this is the other thing, right? What was it that didn't feel good is going to be a complicated thing for a lot of us. Because what it was that made us feel not good will often be the very thing that we've been indoctrinated that we have to do. And it's normal, and that's good. Like going to this very specific job that you actually don't like. A relationship that on paper, to your culture, sounds perfect and great, but to you, it makes you feel like you want to run away. Right? And then you're going to have to come to terms with, my body and my real self is having a reaction to something my culture says is good. And then that's an existential crisis, right? Or the other way around. I'm feeling really good about a thing my culture, my caregivers, my life has told me is evil, wrong, bad, shouldn't do. Like when I first discovered yoga. as a Christian, as a 14-year-old, super devout Christian, yoga feels really good. Like, oh no, like really, now what do I do? Right? Like, and that's just a little example. But anyways, the point being, this is hard work. This is not easy. Learning from our pain is very challenging. Learning from the things that contradict our culture and make it so that we then, right, again, are going to have to understand that now we're literally going to panic because this is threatening this is how I fit in, and I survive by fitting in. Right? As soon as we recognize these things in ourselves, that it's like, okay, it's not that I'm broken, right? The main reason we all want to believe that we can just fix ourselves is because if we can just fix ourselves, that means we will be able to fit into culture and be happy and be good. If it's the other option, the reason I have to self-sabotage, cope, numb, the reason I can't have success in the system, the reason it all hurts is not because there's something wrong with me. It's because the culture is incorrect. And then I'm going to have to be different and therefore risk being rejected. That answer is way scarier, right? Like, so even when I say to you, you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just going to have to find your own path. That doesn't feel relieving for most of us. Most of us are like, yeah, no, I'm going to go to Tony Robbins. He's going to teach me how to be successful and happy and just manifest my dreams and be an entrepreneur. And I would much rather that, because then I'll fit in. I'll be celebrated in our culture. I will have millions of followers and friends, and everyone will love me because I'll fit in. I'll be in. I'm just going to fix this broken thing about me that makes it so that I can't be in, right? I'll just lose the weight. I'll just get a bubble butt, right? No, come on. Don't tell me that I'm going to discover myself and I'm going to discover that I don't want to do what culture is telling me to do, and then being myself means I'm not cool. And I don't mean that in a flippant way. I mean, like, yeah, you're going to literally feel like you're going to die. Every time you realize there's something about you that just doesn't fit into culture and that's never going to be how it is, we are all going to go into, well, then I'm going to be alone forever. I'm going to be alone forever. I'm going to be outcasted forever. No one's ever going to understand me. No one's ever going to know me. If this is true about me, I'm going to die because I'm going to get kicked out, and I'm going to die, and I'm going to get kicked out, and I'm going to be alone forever. So that's normal. And then we have to be able to love ourselves enough and make ourselves safe enough that we go and do it anyways. Because that's the only way we're going to find fulfillment. That's the only way we're going to find joy. That's the only way we're going to actually get out of the pain that we're in, is by figuring out a life that works for us, instead of continually believing that we're broken and trying to fit ourselves into a thing we're not ever going to fit into. And it's much harder to do that than to just keep going to the Tony Robbins thing, the law of attraction, get all positivity frenzy whipped up, and then sent back out and do the thing that everyone else is doing. Right? Because the spirituality world is teaching us to be secular more and more. Right? Abundance is spiritual, and go be a boss babe, and the more people you can have influence over, the better you are, and all of this, right? It's consumerism dressed up as spirituality. The universe has your back. Okay? But is it that? Is that spirituality? Like, I don't, is that? Anyways, but that's another session for another day. So that's why this focus I have is so much on the shadow, and so much on don't run away from your pain. Don't run away from your self-sabotage. Don't try and fix your coping mechanism. What is it that you need? What is it that you want? What are you actually feeling? Who are you actually? What would fulfill you? How is it that the systems you're in aren't working? And what would work for you? And yeah, How do we work through that fear of death when we think we're going to die because we're going to get rejected? Because that's going to happen over and over and over again. How do we work through the, yeah, but I can't figure it out? Because that's also going to be a huge thing. They're like, okay, well, if this isn't how I'm supposed to be and this isn't what I want, I don't know how to get to what I want. I don't even know what would work for me. Or we think that the thing that is going to get us to where we want to go is, how do we get there? How do we do it? That's a whole big, like, the life that I want to live is this perfect afterlife. How do I get there? And the reality is just steps. The reality is just supporting yourself. The reality is just little bits of curiosity and compassion at a time. And the steps will reveal themselves to you. You will see your next step when you're in safety. The next thing will become obvious and you'll wonder how you never saw it. And if we can just be in the moment, and if we can just do the next thing, if we can just be here for ourselves, do the next thing, be here for ourselves, do the next thing, learn from whatever we learn from. Because remember, the next thing is not always just perfect step to perfect step to perfect step to perfect step. Oftentimes, the next perfect step is going to be a failure. We're going to learn through the contrast. We're going to learn through the how it didn't work. We're going to learn something about reality that we thought it worked this way and I should just be able to do this and it should work like that, and it doesn't. And that's incredibly helpful, right? So we have to get out of this mindset that anything hard or resistance or that doesn't go how we thought it was going to go means that what we want is impossible, because it doesn't. It just means how we thought we were going to get it isn't the way. So what did we just learn from that, right? So when we get into this mindset of really nothing is negative, nothing is bad, nothing is something we want to run away from. All of it is just information. Every emotion is information. Every feeling is information. Every step we take is information. That can be something that empowers us to understand reality better, even if it's just, okay, I tried a thing, it's not possible in our society, it's not possible in our system, because our system is set up in a shitty way. That's very important information to have. Right? It's not always that you can do something about it. It's not always that it's you that's causing the problem. Sometimes it's like, the reason I'm suffering is because of the system I'm in. And then you become a person who's working to dismantle the system. Because you understand why it doesn't work. You understand what the needs that are being met within the system are. So you can create a new system that meets those same needs better without the harm being caused. This is the point. So we don't want to run away from the pain. We don't want to run away from the shadow. We don't want to run away from our trauma. And right, because that's the other thing. If we don't acknowledge our traumas, if we don't acknowledge these patterns of thought and these patterns of belief that continually make us feel like shit, it doesn't matter how much positive thinking we do. It doesn't matter how much manifesting we do. It doesn't matter. We're going to be drawn back to that because that's what we believe. That's our program. And we have to love those parts of ourselves safe to understand, why do I keep telling myself this story? How is this story trying to protect me from something? Why do I believe this? Look at all the evidence I've gathered to support this story. And then challenging that and questioning that to try to see if there is another reality is difficult. So we do this shadow work because finding that positivity without doing the shadow work is not possible. That stuff is always going to be there until we deal with it, right? You're not going to get rid of a part of yourself. You're not going to just get rid of a thought. You're not going to get rid of a program. You're going to process it. Yes, toxic positivity is toxic. Now, to the point of today's talk, how do we use positivity on our path without going into spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity? Because we have to remember that, yes, listening to our pain is a huge part of the picture. When we're understanding what's hurting us, when we really focus on, like, okay, these thoughts feel terrible, that means there's something about them that's not true. Even though I have collected all this evidence to support that, and my mind has filtered out, right? We understand how our perceptions work. That when we have a belief system that's put in place, our mind will filter by highlighting all the things that support that belief system and filtering out all the things that reject it, that contradict it. So when we have a thought that feels terrible, a lot of us will be like, yeah, but I only have evidence to support that that thought is true, because look at all of these things. I'm like, well, yeah, that's your perception. Not that you're crazy. You're not. It's just that that's how the human mind works, is that when we have taken on a belief, it's because there's so much stimulation in the world. If we were to just take everything in, we'd be confused all the time. So we just need to understand that just because we have evidence to support a belief doesn't mean that our belief is true. Because our mind has been busy filtering. This aligns with belief, so highlight that. This doesn't align with belief, so just filter it out. Don't even perceive it. So we could have been collecting a whole bunch of evidence to disprove what we believe, and we're just not even seeing it because it didn't align with our belief. That's called cognitive bias. Okay, so we have to be able to work with, okay, if my feelings are telling me that this feels terrible, my mind is programmed to believe it. But so like this is our key to freedom. Like we need to understand this, right? That our minds can be programmed in any which way. You will have actual proof. That's what I just said. There will be proof to support your belief. But that doesn't mean that it's fully true. That doesn't mean that it's the only way. Right? Like I had plenty of support for the belief that no one ever likes me. And no one ever loves me, and everyone rejects me at some point. Because I had been rejected many times. Lots of people discovered who I was, and they were like, I hate you. I had absolute proof that that was true. But the belief that everyone does it, that nobody loves me, that no one has ever loved me, was not true. You see? There's a difference. I was literally filtering out my sister, who literally has never rejected me one time from our entire relationship ever. And I just didn't think about that when I'm in that dark place. I was literally filtering the fact that my husband was still here loving me, and just only thinking about the times where I perceived he had rejected me. It's intense how much our minds will say all evidence supports that this belief is true, and there is no evidence to the contrary. When in reality, there absolutely is evidence to the contrary. And even so, because what was really under that belief? Everyone rejects me, everyone hates me, therefore I suck. I have to hate myself. And the real reality was, it doesn't matter if everyone rejects me. It doesn't matter if everyone hates me. There can be someone who always loves me. I can have access to love at all times if I choose to love me. So even though it was like, I feel like shit about myself, and I feel completely justified in that because I only have evidence to support that everyone rejects me, the reality was, I'm feeling disconnected from love. And I feel like love only comes from the outside. And I feel like no one ever loves me on the outside. When the real truth was, I don't have to hate myself. Even if the whole world hates me, I don't have to hate me. And then I can have access to love at all times. And then I can feel safe. And then I can start to see that, oh, actually, that's not true. Look at all these other people who have loved me. You see? If a thought feels terrible, it's not true. And deconstructing our belief systems, what our mind has been indoctrinated to believe, is difficult because our minds have been indoctrinated. We are fully convinced of what we are convinced of. And our minds did that thing that they do, that when we take on a belief, it says, okay, fine. If that's what we're deciding we're going to believe, I'm filtering reality to align with that belief. Our emotions are the things that cannot be conditioned. This is the power of emotional mastery. We can be wrong about what we think our emotions are telling us. Okay, so again, that's why this can get tricky. We can be wrong about what our emotions are saying. We can be wrong about the emotion that we're in. We can be perceiving, I feel shitty right now, and then that means that I shouldn't do this, and this isn't right for me, and I suck at this. When really, I feel scared right now, because this is the path I want to go down, but my conditioning tells me if I go down this path, I'm going to be rejected, so I shouldn't. And it's my nervous system shutting me down. You see? But at the end of the day, if a thought feels terrible, it's not true. And deconstructing our conditioning means that, yes, we all have to accept we have mental programs that have supported our beliefs. But if our emotions are saying it's not true, we have to default to the emotion. And then we have to get curious. We have to make space. We have to learn how to actually feel what we're feeling and not assume and not project and all of these things. So if we're only doing shadow work, if we're only focusing on the pain, if we're only focusing on what doesn't feel good, we're only going to get half the message about what kind of life works for us. This is why learning how to balance focusing on the positive and focusing on what is working and focusing on what is good in our lives is so vitally important. And if we miss this step, I'm going to call it we're now in shadow bypassing. Okay? Because essentially what we want to understand is that all the stuff that's painful, all the stuff that hurts, is what doesn't work for me. These are the things I want to dismantle. These are the things I want to let go of. These are the things that are the false beliefs. These are the things that aren't working. But we can't build a house by just taking down all the things that don't work. We can't build a new system by just getting rid of stuff. What I always say, we can't become not something. You don't become a non-smoker. You don't become a non-addict. You replace those behaviors with something that works better. You understand that you are doing the drinking or the smoking to get a need met. That need is going to exist whether you want it to or not. And how you're meeting the need changes to something more positive, to something more life-generating, to something more enhancing. And you become a person who communicates your emotions better. You become a person who learns to weave real pleasure into your life so that you don't need to go to an addiction. You become someone who understands the need and gets that need met in a new way. We don't become not something. So if we are not capable of, while we're doing our shadow work, while we're understanding the things that cause us pain, while we're being honest about the stuff that is shitty and doesn't work and that we need to question in our paradigm and all of these things, we also need to be focusing on, like, again, and this toxic positivity versus actual positivity. I'm not asking you to pretend something feels good that doesn't. I'm not asking you to look for something that's working that isn't. I am not asking you to pretend reality is any way that it isn't. I'm saying, look in your reality for the things that genuinely do feel good, that genuinely are working, that genuinely feel aligned for you right now. Even if it's just tiny little, I love going to the grocery store. It makes me feel good to just be in there and choose my own food. Even if it's just, I found this book and I really like reading it. I like the way the pages feel in my hands. I like the way the book smells. I like the way the author speaks, whatever it is. Finding these little bits of actual joy, because this is very important. It's the other side of the coin. This is the information that while we're dismantling these things we don't want, we're also in the process of building the life we do want. Because again, A life where you just got rid of a bunch of stuff isn't a life. You're not building a life by dismantling and only dismantling. And a lot of us end up feeling really hopeless and really trapped and really down when we get so into shadow bypassing, so into only focusing on what hurts, only processing our pain, being with our negative emotions all the time, because that's horrible, that's horrifying. When you're just in the state of constantly trying to process the negative, you're gonna get to a place where you feel hopeless and helpless and like life is terrible and not worth living. Because of course, if there's nothing in your perception, if there's nothing in your world where you're also focusing on what works and what you're building and what you're going towards, even if it's just the slightest, smallest thing, you're gonna get depressed. I guarantee you. Because that's not healthy. That's your emotions, again, saying, hey, this isn't complete. Shadow work without focusing on the positive as well is incomplete. It's half the story. That's half a life. So how do we do this without bypassing? Well, again, first thing, like I said, don't make shit up. Don't pretend something feels good that doesn't. Don't pretend you like something that doesn't. You don't. Don't pretend something's working that isn't. Okay? This is not about pretending or convincing yourself or making up a reality that doesn't exist. No one is asking you to pretend. Okay? What I am saying is we do need to challenge ourselves, especially when it's hard, because it's going to be hard sometimes. Mark my words. There are going to be days you do not want to do this. There are going to be days where it feels dangerous and bad and wrong to let yourself be happy about something. Where you're going to resist it. Where you're going to be like, no, I don't want to. Like, I've had places and times where I've been in such a state that trying to find something good, I was like, no, like that feels horrible. I don't want to do that. And that was my nervous system. That was my nervous system saying, no, I'm going to protect you. Okay, because here's the thing. The main reason most of us go so shadow bypass, go so I'm just going to focus on the shit, I'm just going to be in the pain, I'm not going to let myself feel good about anything, I'm not going to let myself experience any pleasure, is because we think or believe or on some level that we can get through all of our pain, that if we just do all of our processing and do all of our trauma work and do all of our healing and figure it out, if we just like muscle through this, we'll get to an after where it's just pleasure forever. We are telling ourselves that if I let myself feel pleasure right now, before I'm fully fixed and before I'm fully healed and before I've fully figured it all out, that means the pain is inevitably going to come back. And the contrast is the thing I really don't want to feel. I would rather just stay in pain and hope that if I stay in pain long enough, I'll figure it out and then it will all be done and then I can just exist in pleasure forever versus having to feel pleasure for a little bit knowing the pain's going to come back. Does that make sense? We resist allowing ourselves to feel pleasure because we're scared, because we know it's not going to last forever. The pleasure is going to go away. And we don't want to feel pleasure knowing the pain is going to come back. Like I said, we would rather just stay in the pain and hope that if we stay in it long enough, we'll get rid of it forever, and then we can just be in pleasure. And then we don't have to feel that back and forth. But the reality is, life is never going to work like that. Life is always going to be pain and pleasure. But we're never going to fully figure it out. Or at least, maybe there are people out there who have fully figured it out. I'm not one of them. Okay? I am not one of them. I'm not speaking from that experience. I'm speaking from the experience of I have radically changed my life. Things are so much better on every level than they've ever been. And there's still pain in my life. There are still things that are not perfect. My health is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. My relationships are not perfect. My work is not perfect. There's still pain. I'm still figuring it out. I have figured out a lot of things, and I have a lot of things left to figure out. I'm still alive. This process from 14 on my parents' couch, living like probably what could only be the most opposite to who I am life possible, to where I am now, was focusing on the things that felt like shit, processing my trauma, feeling something that felt good, following it, getting in pain again, my body shutting down again, something horrible happening, being in that, finding something good, focusing on that, going towards that, building that. Life gets a little bit better. My body shuts down again. There's a whole thing I don't understand about my body. There's this shit going on with my body, but there's also these other good things that are really happening. My relationship is kind of shitty right now, but wow, my work is going really well. That's how life has been for me. Just continually following the things that were working while I was working on the things that weren't working. And realizing I was never going to arrive if I didn't allow myself to experience the pleasure that was available now. I was never going to let myself feel pleasure. It was either I'm going to learn how to toggle back and forth between the pleasure that's available and the pleasure, because again, remember, the main point I'm trying to make here is that pleasure is the other side of our guidance coin. If we don't allow ourselves to experience pleasure, we're missing half the map for how to create a life that works for us. Pain isn't enough information. Only knowing what doesn't work for us doesn't tell us what does. We can never build a life that's better and better and better and better and better. That's radical transformation at some point. If we don't also follow what feels good, if we don't get honest about the things that really work, the things that we're excited about, the things that feel good to us. And really, we have to get to a place where we do not judge ourselves for the things that make us feel good. Because in the beginning, we're going to have pleasure that's kind of self-sabotaging. We're going to have things that feel good that are also kind of messy. That's normal. Most of us don't have a pure pleasure thing. That's just totally who we are and a thing that's life-generating, and we just go for that. Okay? That's normal. We'll get there. You build up to that. Most of us start with, I really feel good when I eat the ice cream. So let yourself eat the ice cream without guilt. Make it fully safe. Stop judging yourself. Stop trying to fix it. Get curious about it. What about this feels good? What are the needs being met here? How is this serving me? And then slowly, how can I start to take those good things and find other ways of getting those same needs met in a slightly different way that's maybe less, that has a bit less pain involved? That's all. We have to be able to trust the pleasure that we have. And rather than judging it as not good because, look, it has this negative consequence, we say, okay, but what are the positive consequences? What's the good stuff? What about this brings me pleasure? Because that is a message, right? I need a break. Part of what brings me pleasure about this is that it gets me out of that. Okay, so how can you start to give yourself outs from your life in healthier ways while you're working on shifting the things about your life that you need an out from so that eventually you need less of an out? And then at the same time, those little tiny, little itty bitty things that you think are just silly and stupid, right? Because a lot of us are like, okay, if I'm going to focus on my pleasure, it needs to be something that's like, because this is my purpose, and this is who I am, And it's giving me this huge information about who I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be in my life. So like, right, I'm a little bit interested in this book. So that means I'm supposed to be an author. Or that means I'm supposed to travel to where this book is. Or what? No. It could literally just be that you really like that book. And you'll read other books like that. And that'll be a part of your life. That's a part of who you are. You read books. And it's not going to be anything bigger than that. And it's a part of your life that brings you pleasure. It's not capitalism. It's not for something. It's just a thing that brings you joy. And now you have all these moments for the rest of your life till you die where you had pleasure. And then sometimes those little things that seem stupid, that seem insignificant, like me falling in love with durian, did turn into this whole, like, literally, I live where I live. I discovered a country I didn't even know existed. I've had all of these adventures because of being in love with durian. But, like, right in 2007 in Calgary, it just looked like I was a weird freak who liked this weird, freaky fruit that no one else likes. How could that be important? I was, like, obsessed with it. And it, like, changed my life. So we have to be able to let ourselves experience the things that feel good in our lives, the things that are working, even if they're only partially working, even if there is a negative consequence or a negative backlash. We keep showing up and we keep saying, okay, but what is good about this? What is helping me about this? What feels good about this? What's the positive thing that I'm getting out of this? And we get really honest about that. Because that's information. And the little tiny things that we feel excited about, that we feel joy about, and remember too, that this is going to be tender. So there are going to be people who judge you for the things that you find interesting. When I first started blogging, most people are like, that's silly. Your blog is just all about food. Yeah. And then I became a nutritionist, and that was my way of getting my first remote job. That turned into me being able to move to Asia. That turned into this life that I'm living. My stupid little food blog, again, became the reason I live the life I live now. So we're going to get judged. People aren't going to understand. They're going to belittle you. You don't need to tell anybody. Just start following the things that feel good. Expect that you're going to feel like it's nothing and it's stupid and you want to reject it. Expect that you're going to be like, yeah, but it's not perfect because look, it causes harm, so I'm just horrible. And then we start to say, okay, no, but that's not it. What's the positive intention? How can I just follow this thing and just trust that if something feels good, just follow it? Like, really, just follow it. Who cares where it goes? Let go of your attachment to, well, if it feels good, it's got to lead me to my career, it's got to lead me to my partner, it's got to lead me to some big answer. It might just be something that now you have a thing that you can do for the rest of your life that feels good. Like, I love Sudoku. That's not a part of anything, right? There's no greater purpose to that than it's fun to play a game every once in a while so that I'm not just always working. It's little moments of pleasure within a life, because that's a life. That's a whole life, a whole big life. Your life isn't just your job. Your life isn't just your relationship. No one part of your life is going to bring you complete fulfillment. We have to start looking at ourselves holistically. And then, yes, the things that bring you pleasure are the other side of the information coin for building your life. If we don't allow ourselves to focus on the things that are working and keep building those things, if we don't allow ourselves to start focusing on what does feel good and keep building on those things, understand, in the beginning, it's not going to look like anything. In the beginning, it's not going to really be anything. It's going to be building on these things that feel good over years and years and years, right? Like, I started with, I really like durian and I'm super interested in nutrition. And now it's this that I'm doing. I could never have guessed that it was going to turn into whatever it is that I do now. Right? Sitting on my parents' couch being obsessed with nutrition books turns into I have healed my body in all these certain ways and figured out all this stuff, and I am so much better than all the people who have all the conditions that I have, that I know of. I'm not perfect, it's not great, it's not, everything is awesome, but it's so much better than it used to be. It's so much better than I could say. And I have this whole career that I didn't even know was a career. But it took 15 years. I've just been building on the things that worked for 15 years. Just building on the things that work for 15 years. And you have to remember, right? Slow and steady. When you just keep building, when you just keep adding, when you just keep evolving, in 10 years, your life could be radically different. It couldn't seem like a radical before and after transformation. But you'll know it was no radical before and after transformation. It was just a continual building on the things that worked, a continual evolution of the things that worked, and it kept building and building and building and building and building, and now it's this big thing. But like I say, if you're not building, if you're only dismantling, you're never going to have a life that feels good. You're going to get depressed. You're going to be shadow bypassing. It's only half the puzzle. So, no, don't pretend that things feel good that don't. Don't amp yourself up about shit you hate. I'm not saying that. I do think that that's toxic positivity. Because again, that's not a message. Trying to make yourself feel positive about something you don't feel positive about, how does that help you? Because if you don't actually feel positive about it, it's not something that actually feeds you. Why would you want to keep building that? Right? But I guarantee you, every single one of you who are watching this, there's something in your life right now that you like. And it may not be this perfect, awesome, pure pleasure idea. It could be ice cream. It could be a self-sabotaging behavior. Investigate. Why does that feel good? What are the needs being met? Have compassion for yourself. Don't expect yourself to change, but get really curious. Okay, what's working for me about this? How is this serving me? And ask that genuinely and with compassion. And then see what you want to do with it when you really get that information. Your nervous system might then start to feel safe enough to say, okay, maybe I want to learn to meet this need in a different way. Right? Or you will have these little things that are working. And when you don't write them off as insignificant, when you don't judge them, when you don't have these super high expectations of them, when you don't worry about what everyone else thinks, and you just let yourself follow. Never underestimate how much that can change your life. Never underestimate how much that can literally be the littlest thing that turns into this whole thing. Right? If my story of I got obsessed with durian and reading raw food books turned into this whole life that I'm living now, everyone thought it was stupid. I thought it was stupid. But it felt really good to me. I was just obsessed with it. And it absolutely changed my life. I'm so glad I followed that little weird thing that no one else understood. And I was weird, and I was alone. I was the only one I knew who was interested in those things for a long time. Eventually, I found other people like me, many, many years later. But even in that, I'm glad that I didn't rely on that, because the fact that I know that I can just do it whether anyone likes it or not means that I know I have my autonomy. I can build my life whether I'm being supported or not. I can support me. And I want that for you. So you gotta trust yourself. And like I say, don't expect that to mean that everything's gonna go perfectly and smoothly. When you follow your desires, it's all gonna just work out perfect. I have followed my desires into a ditch many, many, many times. I have followed my desires right into like tripping over something and hurting myself and like, oh, why did I do that? And I learned from it. I never made that mean I can't trust myself. My desires are wrong. Everything is stupid. Why did I do that? I can't trust myself. My intuition was wrong. No. I was like, okay, it didn't go how I thought it was going to go. What did I learn? I'm not giving up on what I want. I'm not giving up on the direction I'm heading. I know that still that's my course. This just wasn't the step. There must be another way. There must be something else. What did I just learn from the failure? Don't let anyone tell you that when you're following your path, it's all going to work out perfect. It's not. You're going to fall off many cliffs. You're going to get it wrong many times. And that's good. That's information. Just learn from it. You can learn from it. It doesn't mean you can't trust yourself. It doesn't mean you were wrong. It doesn't mean you're off path. None of that. It just means it didn't go how you thought it was going to go. Reality isn't working how you thought it was going to work. So learn how it does work. You just got some information there. Be nice to yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Be upset. Be disappointed. Be scared. All that stuff. Process your emotions. And then, okay, what did I learn? And how is that going to inform my next step? What else feels good? And then if that leads you off a ditch, do it again. Keep following. Because you will get there. You can trust yourself. It will be messy and complicated, and you're going to get there. Just don't give up. And what matters to you matters. Even if everyone around you thinks it's stupid, even if everyone around you invalidates it and belittles you and tells you don't, that'll never be anything. Who cares? I'm here, and I'm telling you, no. It fucking matters. It matters. Even if it's just, that's going to be a thing that you enjoy doing for the rest of your life. And it has nothing to do with capitalism, and it has nothing to do with your purpose, and it has nothing to do with any of the other things. It's incredibly important because it matters to you. Let yourself do it. Let yourself do what feels good. Investigate what the good parts of it are. If there's pain involved, investigate the pain. Don't judge yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. Keep following and building on what feels good. Keep investigating and dismantling what feels bad. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because pleasure is the other side of the coin. If you don't also follow pleasure, if you only go into shadow, you will never build a life that works. You will get very depressed, and life will feel hopeless. So if that's how you're feeling, start to focus a little bit on the things that are working. And it might be painful because these parts of you have been rejected and denied, and you've been told not to have these things, and you've been told they're stupid, and you've been told they're silly. And yeah, love those parts. I see you. I validate you. I am so sorry you've been written off. That's not fair, and it's not true. You can trust it. Just make a little space for it. Even if in the beginning you say, okay, I'm just going to acknowledge that I like this thing, and I'm not even going to act on it because I'm too scared right now. That's okay. Go as slow as you need. You don't have to tell anyone. You don't have to show anybody. Just make room for it. Just start to make it safe inside of yourself. And then slowly, you'll get a little bit of courage to do it. And then someone might judge you, and then you're going to run back into your cave, and that's going to happen, and that's okay. Love yourself safe. Do it again. Keep showing up for what matters to you. Don't judge it. If there's a negative consequence, that's okay. That's normal. That's going to happen. We're all doing it. So look for what is good about what you're doing. Look for what isn't working. Keep balancing those two things. No judgment. Compassion and curiosity. Keep learning. Take your steps. If you fall, learn from it. It doesn't mean you made a mistake. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean you shouldn't follow that path. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just what did you learn? And remember again, the mind can be programmed, the emotions can't. We're not always right about what our emotions mean, so we got to get curious. Okay? But if you don't have pleasure too, you can't build your life. So don't go into shadow bypassing. It's a balance of both. Focus on what works just as much as you're focusing on what doesn't. And you don't have to do a perfect balance every day, just overall. right? Sometimes you're going to be in your shadow work, and then when that starts to alleviate itself, or you get a little bit too dark, go to the other side. Do some pleasure work. What does feel good? What do I want to work on? What do I want to start to build? What are the things that just bring me pleasure? Keep building that. It's got to be back and forth. That's how I did it. So I'm just sharing with you what worked for me. Both. Okay, and then I got asked, what books do I read? I really don't read books. But if you're going to listen to anyone, if you're going to read anybody, Martha Beck. Read all of her books. She's the foundation for where everything that I speak of comes from. I either learned it from her or I learned it from life. She's basically the only spiritual teacher I think I've ever been able to say there's nothing weird about that for me. So Martha Beck has a lot of books. Read them all. She's incredibly inspiring. And then the rest of it is life. Life will teach you. Read life. Okay? All right. That's it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here. Your pleasure matters. It's the other side of the information coin. Don't write it off. Make room for it. It's the other half. Okay? Without it, you can't build a life without building. Okay. I love you. See you next week. Have a good week. Have a good rest of your day. I think you're great. I think what matters to you matters.